The protagonist of this story, Yogiri, possesses an extraordinary ability that allows him to instantly kill anyone who harbors the intent to kill him, regardless of their location, whether close by or on the other side of the world. Simply by speaking a sentence, he can make his enemies die instantly. One day, Yogiri was on a school trip with his classmates, traveling in a school bus. He took a nap during the ride and was awakened by his classmate, Tomochika. Upon waking up, he found that only 4 people remained on the bus, 2 alive and 2 dead, and a dragon was relentlessly attacking the bus. When the dragon charged at him upon his awakening, Tomochika, terrified, clung to Yogiri, thinking they were doomed. However, Yogiri merely spoke, and the dragon fell dead instantly. He then calmly sat down and started playing a game, only stopping when Tomochika had calmed down to ask about what had happened. It turned out that their class had just boarded the bus for the trip when they passed through a tunnel, transitioning suddenly from night to day, and found themselves on a vast plain. Initially, Tomochika thought it was a prank. However, a woman claiming to be a sage named Sion boarded the bus, casually killed the teacher guarding it, and took the students hostage. She spoke in a language they couldn't understand, claimed her combat power was 530,000, and explained that they were in another world summoned by her, the sage. She also mentioned that this world was governed by sages who needed occasional replenishments. Sion then installed a system called Grace in everyone on the bus, instructing them to make use of the system to strive to become sages within a month. However, including Tomochika and Yogiri, 4 people did not activate the system. Sion explained that some were incompatible with the system and could not become sages. Instead, they would be treated as livestock. She also mentioned that there was a 1-hour beginner task and urged everyone to survive. Tomochika's best friend noticed a panel indicating that dragons would attack them. At this point, the classmates were discussing how to survive, integrating their abilities and ranks. However, 4 people, including Yogiri, had not activated the system, and Yogiri was still sound asleep. Tomochika always remembered him as someone who slept a lot. As those with the system prepared to leave, Tomochika rushed to wake Yogiri. However, Yazaki, who had initiated the integration of abilities, stopped them and had another student, who could enhance charm, cast a spell on the 4. The plan was to leave them as bait for the dragon, allowing the others to safely reach the town. Tomochika couldn't believe that their classmates, including her best friend, would abandon them so quickly. Before she could react, they were locked inside the bus. Soon, the dragon attacked, and 2 of the classmates died. After that, Yogiri woke up and somehow dealt with the dragon. Tomochika wanted to ask how he did it, but Yogiri didn't mention it. Since the system mentioned only 1 dragon for the beginner task, Yogiri led Tomochika out of the bus. Unexpectedly, 3 classmates flew back. Yogiri asked Tomochika if she wanted to deal with them. While she hesitated, Yogiri reminded her that their classmates had abandoned them, which was no different from murder. The 3 landed as soon as they saw the dragon was dead, planning to turn the 4 dead classmates into zombies. Tomochika realized their ill intentions. When they saw Tomochika was wary, one attacked immediately, threatening to make her their plaything. Disgusted, Tomochika recoiled. Irritated, Yogiri simply raised his hand, causing one to drop dead. The other 2 mocked until they realized their friend was actually dead. Yogiri casually killed another. Only Hanakawa was left, trembling in fear. Yogiri asked him to check if his friends were truly dead. Hanakawa, a healing mage, tried to revive them, but found they were completely dead. He accused Yogiri of going too far. Yogiri, puzzled, responded that he was merely defending himself. Hanakawa was left speechless. Yogiri explained that his ability is simple. If he wants someone dead, they drop dead immediately. Hanakawa pretended to beg for mercy and tried to sneak attack, but Yogiri had already sensed his hostility. It turns out Yogiri can feel when someone harbors ill intentions towards him, combining this with his ability to instantly kill those who wish him harm. Hanakawa fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the unreasonable power. Yogiri wondered why Hanakawa and his companions, who had only recently acquired the system, were so confident. It turned out they had already been to another world, defeated a demon lord, and returned to the bus before being summoned again. Yogiri gleaned key information that there might still be a chance for them to return. He was about to kill Hanakawa, who quickly knelt down and put on a slave necklace, swearing allegiance to Yogiri. However, Tomochika and Yogiri were uninterested. Yogiri ordered Hanakawa to stay in the forest and took all his valuable possessions before sending him away, not wanting to keep someone with dubious intentions nearby. Throughout, Tomochika supported Yogiri, feeling indebted to him for saving her and not questioning his actions. She wondered if Yogiri wasn't concerned about being betrayed by her, but he said it didn't matter as his intention was merely to protect her. Tomochika thought Yogiri might have had feelings for her, but he mentioned he just noticed how soft her chest was when she hugged him during the dragon attack. Frustrated, Tomochika questioned if there were any decent men in this world. Meanwhile, the sage Sion received a report that 4 students had died. She initially thought the students had abandoned the powerless 4, but was surprised to learn that 2 of the dead were S-rank candidates, suspecting instant kill magic. However, she wasn't overly concerned, instructing her subordinate to investigate further. Yogiri and Tomochika arrived near a town just as the gates were closing and found they couldn't understand the local language. Fortunately, an official inside could communicate and told them their classmates had gone to the capital. They were also informed that orders were not to hinder sage candidates, so they weren't charged an entry fee. Tomochika decided to explore the streets with Yogiri, noticing the place fit the typical otherworld stereotype. They encountered a cat-eared girl who offered to help sage candidates for free, but Tomochika noted that free help is often the most costly. When asked why, the cat-eared girl said that forming a good relationship with men who could become sages would brighten her future. Following her directions, Yogiri and Tomochika ended up buying a lot and were ambushed, set up in advance. These people couldn't defeat capable sage candidates and took their frustration out on those without powers to relieve stress and make money. Yogiri stated, "Then it shouldn't be a problem if I kill you all, right?" Tomochika turned pale and advised them to reconsider their actions, but Yogiri had already taken action. He initially intended to show mercy for Tomochika's sake by only partially killing these individuals, but he didn't control his strength well, and several ended up dead. Only one was left blinded. Seeing this, the cat-eared girl and the leading trafficker trembled. The cat-eared girl mentioned she had a younger brother waiting for her at home. Yogiri coldly dismissed this excuse for her actions, simply saying, "Die," and they tried to flee, thinking they could escape, but they were met with a death sentence. Before dying, the cat-eared girl deeply regretted getting involved with Yogiri. Just as these traffickers died, soldiers arrived on the scene. The captain had been investigating the kidnapping gang and planned to use Yogiri and Tomochika as bait, but the traffickers died before this could happen. Fortunately, one trafficker, blinded but alive, was taken away by the soldiers. Yogiri asked the soldiers for a place to stay, and they were directed to a luxury hotel. Considering Tomochika's safety as a woman, they decided to rest separately, though Yogiri's room was next door. Tomochika realized she still had an external protection from Ancestor, who had been with her all along but had stayed hidden, fearing instant death by Yogiri. Ancestor warned Tomochika to alert Yogiri, as she would be accompanying them the next day to avoid accidental harm. Ancestor had prevented Tomochika from installing the grace system, which, while useful, would put her life under the control of the sages. Ancestor promised to teach Tomochika ancestral archery to ensure her safe return to her original world. The next day, Tomochika went downstairs and asked Yogiri if they should catch up with their classmates. Yogiri had already inquired at the front desk, which helped locate the classmates, translated the local language, and purchased some equipment, even arranging a game console charger for Yogiri. The front desk came with bus tickets, and Yogiri entrusted the remainder of his valuables to the front desk for investment. Tomochika was skeptical that the front desk could be so reliable, but they agreed to help. Afterwards, the two boarded a train headed for the capital. Tomochika was hand-cranking a generator for Yogiri. Yogiri mentioned that the front desk had deduced their classmates were likely moving through a forest while training. While discussing this, their train was suddenly attacked. "Are there even man-eating ghosts in this world?" Yogiri exclaimed. Meanwhile, the soldiers took the blinded trafficker back, but magic couldn't restore his eyesight. The sage, Lane, arrived and attempted to heal him by replacing his eyes, but even using the power of a vampire ancestor to turn him into a vampire didn't restore his vision. Just then, a hero attacked suddenly. On Yogiri's side, A broadcast informed them that the explosion was due to a sage fighting invaders, which accidentally affected them. Yogiri and Tomochika got off the train and saw a robot fighting with a sage. Tomochika, noticing her excellent vision, could clearly see people flying in the sky. Tomochika asked if they should eliminate these two. Yogiri wondered why they should intervene since the train strike was accidental. Without a standard, they would just be killing at whim. Tomochika realized she might be falling into a trap. However, their discussion was interrupted as the battle reached them. Elsewhere, Lane was attacked by the hero, who inexplicably targeted her instead of a demon lord, declaring his intent to kill all sages and unleashed his strongest attack. It was understandable why the hero despised the sages, as the casualties were caused by them. Yogiri confronted the sage about why they attacked them, and the sage replied that they were just displeased and took it out on the civilians. Without hesitation, Yogiri eliminated him. The robot then expressed a desire to talk with Yogiri. Meanwhile, the hero failed to kill Lane, who, despite her wish to die, lamented her inability to do so. The robot revealed to Yogiri that it also came from another world and was looking for a way back, but couldn't take them due to Yogiri's dangerous ability. To return from this lower world, immense power was needed to ascend and locate the coordinates. Both sides prepared for a trade. Yogiri asked Tomochika if she wanted anything, but she shook her head. Suddenly, Ancestor appeared and proposed a condition. On Lane's side, another sage's death was reported to Sion, who was somewhat dismissive, suspecting instant death magic. However, she was more concerned about the invaders. To not hinder the sage candidates, Sion decided to handle the dark invaders herself. Meanwhile, Leon sent an undead squad to Floristed City, apparently intending to destroy it. After the train was destroyed, Yogiri and his group could only travel on foot. They didn't ride with the robot because it was considered an invader in this world. However, Ancestor managed to obtain something from it, a device that could mimic any weapon. Their destination was Floristed City. On the way, Tomochika noticed Yogiri was exhausted, realizing he had been fighting off monsters and villains targeting them all along. She initially thought Yogiri might have a limit to his powers, but it turned out he was just physically tired. His ability to kill had no limit. Floristed City looked modern, with protective barriers inside. Following the front desk's recommendations, they found the largest local restaurant to rest. Upon entering the hotel, they unexpectedly met a classmate who had separated from the group and established a harem, selecting beautiful women from a group of slaves as his bodyguards, who were hostile towards Tomochika. She was flabbergasted by their behavior. Yogiri asked Tomochika about this classmate, who was also one of those who had abandoned them. When asked about his confidence, Tomochika explained that Yuki had always been self-assured, popular with girls in high school. Yogiri was puzzled, having slept through much of that time. Were all our high school classmates this bizarre? He wondered. Yuki immediately propositioned Tomochika to be his lover and wanted to make Yogiri his servant, boasting about his dominator skill. Tomochika was skeptical about his confidence, noting he hadn't leveled up. Yuki explained that after completing a task in town, a celebration was held. Haruto, a classmate whose job was an advisor, told Yuki that many were wary of his dominator role. The advisor could see hidden conditions for job upgrades and suggested Yuki buy many low-level servants, as their combat experience would transfer to him. The sage had said that if these candidates failed to become sages, they would end up as livestock to augment power. Trying various methods was the advisor's recommendation, so now Yuki gained experience by merely sending out servants to work, an otherworldly capitalist. Meanwhile, Lane was battling dark invaders. Since arriving in the city, Yogiri had been asleep for 3 days and nights. Tomochika planned to explore the town, but saw a riot breaking out, caused by Lane's undead troops entering the city. She remarked on the chaos of this world. At the same time, Ancestor reported to Tomochika about invisible enemies approaching. Without hesitation, she called to wake up Yogiri. With such a powerful ally, what was there to worry about? Yogiri dreamt of his sister before being woken up by a call from Tomochika. Hearing there was an enemy, he said he would be right there. On his way, he instantly killed an invisible enemy in the hallway and then called the front desk from Tomochika's room to report a body in the hallway. Tomochika recognized the person as one of Yuki's associates. Concerned about potential conflicts, Yogiri decided they should leave. Tomochika quickly packed their bags. Ancestor remarked that as a descendant of samurai, Tomochika seemed indifferent to death, a sentiment she still wasn't comfortable with. Meanwhile, Yuki was busy converting all the monsters in a dungeon into his servants. He was puzzled when one of his female subordinates acted independently, realizing that each servant acted in what they thought was their master's best interest. Worried about scaring Tomochika away, Yuki sent 2 more subordinates to capture her. These subordinates arrived and tried to trap Yogiri and Tomochika with ice pillars, which Yogiri easily destroyed, killing the minions and their staffs. Anything Yogiri wanted dead could be instantly killed, whether it was a person, object, or anything else. Besides the mage, a puppet-controlling girl also attacked, but her ambush was blocked by Tomochika. The mage, harboring a murderous intent, was instantly killed by Yogiri, and the girl, with all her puppets destroyed, pleaded for mercy. Yuki, realizing his plan was exposed, sent a swarm of cockroaches to spy on them, doubting Yogiri's ability to kill anything instantly. Tomochika, disgusted by the cockroaches, was furious and determined that Yuki must die. Yuki's headmate advised him to step back, but as a dominator, he ordered the cockroaches to kill Yogiri immediately. Sensing the murderous intent from the cockroaches, Tomochika decided to kill Yuki herself. Following the source of the murderous intent, she found and instantly killed Yuki. The headmaid, seeing Yuki dead, freed herself and left the dungeon, only to encounter dark invaders. Surprisingly, despite the surrounding destruction, they were still alive. Thus, Lane, hunting the darkness, took the maid as her kin and obtained information from her. Yogiri planned to take Tomochika to the capital, but upon leaving the alley, they found themselves in a scene resembling a zombie apocalypse. Tomochika was speechless, wondering how their otherworldly adventure had suddenly turned into a scene from Train to Busan. Yogiri and Tomochika were in an alley when she asked if he wasn't going to intervene. Yogiri responded that the situation seemed beyond saving. Meanwhile, the city's manager and the leader of the Undead Legion, both subordinates of Lane and former Sage candidates, were arguing. The Undead leader had taken the city's key and announced to the citizens that they must capture Yogiri and Tomochika in the town square or face being attacked by zombies. The manager was infuriated, as he had worked hard to develop the city, only for it to be ruined in a day. Tomochika was puzzled about why they were being hunted. Yogiri guessed it was due to his killing a sage, noting that indiscriminate killing could indeed cause problems. At that moment, some civilians attempted to attack Yogiri, who instantly killed one, stating that those who attack with murderous intent must be prepared for retaliation. However, he realized that the person who incited the civilians probably thought he wouldn't strike ordinary people, which annoyed him. Therefore, Yogiri led Tomochika to the town square. The Legion leader thought Yogiri was surrendering for the civilians' sake, but Yogiri clarified he wasn't so noble. He just wanted to head to the capital and told the leader to open the barrier quickly to spare his own life. The leader, disbelieving and stating they were all undead and couldn't be killed again, was proven wrong, as Yogiri's ability meant absolute death, irreversible by any means. The leader's minion was instantly killed upon trying to attack, breaking the leader's composure. As he tried to transform and attack, he too was instantly killed by Yogiri. Tomochika complained, "At least let him finish transforming." Yogiri wondered why they should wait for that. The city manager surrendered when his subordinate was killed, explaining that he only wanted to develop the city without further disasters, and revealed that it was Lane who had ordered their capture. Tomochika was confused, thinking the sage was Sion, but the manager explained there were many sages in this world, each governing different areas. Despite the rule not to interfere with sage candidates, Lane had acted this time, even manipulating the civilians to attack Yogiri. Meanwhile, a newly contracted maid persuaded Lane to stop, noting that if she felt the need to intervene, it must mean Yogiri was very powerful. Tomochika asked Yogiri if he wanted to address the root cause. He noted there was no direct connection between the civilians and their controller, and he instantly killed those who attacked. Yogiri felt the scene was familiar, reminiscent of a similar test he had faced before. Although he could easily kill the attacking civilians, the city manager's distress over seeing his citizens die was evident. Thus, Yogiri called the manager over. At the same time, Lane suddenly split into numerous clones, declaring that even if her body died and turned to ash, she would continuously revive. These clones reportedly had no memory of Yogiri and thus harbored no ill will towards him. Lane ordered the clones to closely monitor the city and attack immediately at any sign of disturbance, specifically if Dark Invaders attacked or died. Yogiri and Tomochika then encountered a Dark Invader who annihilated everything it touched, resembling a walking gauntlet of doom. Curious, Tomochika asked Yogiri if he could handle it. To her surprise, Yogiri said he could. The city manager pleaded for Yogiri's help, promising to do anything, as the city was on the brink of extinction. Despite his reluctance, Yogiri raised his hand, causing the darkness to die, and the Dark Invader vanished. However, Lane's clones then attacked, seemingly seizing the opportunity to destroy the city. Fortunately, Tomochika, with her keen eyesight, noticed that the red lights were all from the same person, identified by the manager as likely Lane. However, Yogiri struggled to pinpoint her location without triggering the clone's retaliation. The city manager used his authority to teleport Yogiri and others to a specific location. Tomochika's ancestor suggested an idea, so upon arriving at an open space, the mayor immediately teleported away to avoid burdening them. Tomochika targeted one clone, charging with Yogiri and activating the equipment from Ancestor. They killed one clone, and due to their identical nature, the other clones died simultaneously. Maid number 1 thought it was unwise to intervene. Initially, Lane was unaffected, but suddenly, she felt unwell as her main body in another dimension also encountered problems. She believed this was the only way to save the child. The city's attack ceased, and another clone of Lane revived. Though a creation of Lane, this lowly clone had no memories of the original, only leaving behind a recording mentioning Yogiri's name. The lowly seemed intrigued by Yogiri. The city began post-disaster reconstruction. Tomochika and the mayor had a discussion, considering they had technically killed his superior. However, the mayor expressed little respect for the sages and gifted Yogiri and Tomochika a car, wishing them a safe journey to the capital. Following the trope of other series, Yogiri should be the driver, but he admitted his poor skills in racing games often led to crashes. Considering this, Tomochika decided it was safer for her to drive. On the other side, the classmates who had left were leveling up. Among them, a student with the samurai class, Ninomiya, lost his phone, which was returned by Carol, an American transfer student with the ninja class. Their real identities were not simple. They were secretly monitoring Yogiri. Unable to return to their original world, they revealed their true identities to each other. In their world, they even mobilized satellites to monitor Yogiri. When Ninomiya checked the monitor, it showed that the first gate to Yogiri had opened. Meanwhile, Tomochika was nervously hurrying along, while Yogiri sprawled out, dreamt once again of his sister. His sister, named Asaka, initially had a mundane job. She interviewed for a position only to find it required signing a life-and-death contract. The base manager explained it was for a great research project meant for humanity. Asaka's task was to take care of a monster. The staff member told her they needed to research curses and that her teaching credentials and timing were perfect. Asaka felt she had boarded a pirate ship, but had no choice but to enter the lab. Despite being deep underground, the interior was made to resemble a forested mansion. Asaka nervously walked inside and upon opening the door, saw a little boy about 5 or 6 years old. Furious, she couldn't believe they treated such a child as a monster and kept him underground. She immediately carried Yogiri out and left him in a field to play freely. Seeing Yogiri point at her, she thought she might be killed. Instead, Yogiri dealt with a demonic shadow behind her, mentioning such beings often tried to kill him. Asaka softened a bit upon hearing this. Yogiri mentioned it was getting dark, and they could play tomorrow. Asaka realized he didn't even have a name and was hungry, but she had never cooked before and settled for instant noodles. Finding Yogiri reminiscent of her pet dog, she couldn't resist naming him. Yogiri automatically took Asaka's surname, leaving Asaka feeling like his mother. Since then, she taught Yogiri various life skills. At that moment, Yogiri was awakened by Tomochika. Their route to the capital was blocked, and Yogiri wondered why they needed to go there. Tomochika didn't understand either, but knew their classmates were headed there, so they decided to check it out. As Tomochika reversed to find a new route, they realized they had driven into a dragon's lair. Yogiri saw a swarm of dragons and casually said, "Snip?" Tomochika felt like she was watching a pesticide ad. After defeating them, Yogiri realized they had intruded into someone's home, which seemed a bit impolite. At that moment, the leader of the dragons approached, looking like it was about to attack, but Yogiri sensed no malice. When the golden dragon said Yogiri passed and was about to leave, Yogiri quickly called it back, threatening that if it fled, it would meet the same fate as the other dragons. The golden dragon returned and transformed into a blue-haired little girl named Attila. It turned out the dragons attacked to test if they were worthy to meet the Sword Saint. Yogiri and his group didn't even know what a Sword Saint was. Attila explained that the Sword Saint asked her to bring promising young people to meet him, adding that his strength rivaled that of a sage. Yogiri thought he might learn how to get home, but Tomochika worried about getting lost. Attila volunteered immediately, promising to lead them to the Sword Saint and then to the capital. Upon arriving at the venue, they saw many candidates. Attila revealed it was the selection day for the Holy King's Knights. Yogiri felt they had gotten into trouble. A candidate stepped forward, claiming Yogiri and his group had lost their qualification. However, the Sword Saint intervened, stating the test hadn't started yet and included Yogiri and his group in the assessment, which was to fight each other. He gave them 10 minutes, saying if the number of people didn't have, everyone would be disqualified. Yogiri didn't want to participate, but hearing that fleeing would disqualify everyone, he stayed as candidates began attacking each other. Tomochika, now desensitized to death, watched as others tried to attack Yogiri. Just as Yogiri was about to act, a knight stepped in front, saying these people didn't understand the true essence of the Sword Saint and promised to protect them. As someone attempted a sneak attack on the knight, Yogiri quickly eliminated them. The knight thought the Sword Saint had punished them. A badly injured man crawled over to Tomochika, asking her to hand him a colorful stone that had fallen. She did, and the man apologized, then suddenly healed. Yogiri initially didn't want to participate in the upcoming test, but Attila pleaded pitifully, promising to serve under them if they participated. Tomochika, feeling sorry for her, agreed. The knight was named Rick, and the apologetic man was Linnell. Rick explained to Yogiri about the Holy King, who sealed a demon god in this world. The Holy King had sacrificed himself to do this, but the demon god still posed a threat because its followers wanted to resurrect their master, causing chaos worldwide. Tomochika was curious about Linnell's stone. Linnell explained that it was an apology stone, obtained through an apology. Holding the stone and apologizing could heal severe injuries and also allowed him to draw from a mystery box. Linnell admitted his luck was poor, often facing misfortunes such as being captured by a cult as a human sacrifice, only to be resurrected by a goddess and given the apology stone. Tomochika remarked that this was too abstract. Regarding the mystery box, it required 3 stones per draw. "What is this, an FGO gacha mechanic?" Tomochika exclaimed, noting the stones even looked like Holy Grail stones. Linnell demonstrated by drawing a useless item with 3 stones. He mentioned the stones refreshed daily at midnight based on his luck that day. The group then approached the entrance to the second test. Ancestor warned Chika to leave due to the dense miasma inside. Although Ancestor could protect Tomochika, Linnell vomited but quickly recovered using his stone. Rick was able to withstand the miasma, and Yogiri seemed unaffected. Soon, Ancestor announced the miasma had dissipated, but Attila had disappeared, likely meaning they couldn't proceed further inside. The Sword Saint then called Yogiri and the others onto an elevator. From a high vantage, they could see a barrier below, which the Sword Saint described as the site of the world's end. Tomochika, with her sharp vision, saw many immobilized monsters inside the barrier, and a man and a woman impaled by a sword, the Holy King and the demon god. The Sword Saint mentioned that the timing of the world's destruction was uncertain, and his duty was to monitor the situation. Someone from the test threw an attack into the barrier, but it stalled, indicating the time inside the barrier moved very slowly. It would take centuries for the attack to reach the demon god. The Sword Saint then announced the start of the test, requiring everyone to reach the first floor from the rooftop within 24 hours. Jumping off the building's exterior didn't count. Points had to be earned inside. Tomochika ignored the other contestants, focusing on the demon god below and wondering if Yogiri could handle it. She felt Yogiri wouldn't act rashly, but was taken aback when he awkwardly scratched his face and whispered something in her ear, causing her expression to twist. Hearing Yogiri's whisper, Tomochika and Yogiri decided to leave the tower quickly. Rick and Linnell followed them, with Linnell continuously getting injured. Tomochika suggested he might as well keep the stone in his hand. Linnell bravely entered the room, only to find the door locked behind him. Screams could be heard from inside. When they opened the door, they saw Teresa, who had been on the rooftop, killing other contestants to gain points. Teresa, formerly a knight of the Holy King, had been stripped of her knighthood for killing too many people. However, she had managed to qualify for the assessment, believing that only the strong should become knights. Rick, who valued justice, was furious with her actions. Teresa continued her frenzied attack on Rick. Just as Tomochika was about to comment on Teresa's strength, Yogiri simply said a word and Teresa died instantly. Yogiri then picked up Linnell's severed hand, gave him the apology stone, and successfully revived the unfortunate Linnell. On the 98th floor, Yogiri suggested splitting up, fearing mutual slaughter ahead. Thus, Rick and Linnell went separate ways. Yogiri and another person, unlucky with their room assignments, shared the last available room. Tomochika hadn't even had time to feel shy when Yogiri stripped off his clothes, changed into pajamas, and immediately fell asleep, envying his ability to sleep so soundly. Meanwhile, Linnell stayed up until midnight, excited to draw a guaranteed UR-level item from his mailbox. He joyfully used his stone to summon, only to find that the goddess who appeared was not there to join him, but to inform him that his respawn point was now in this hotel. She then left, leaving Linnell staring in disbelief. A respawn point inside a dungeon was indeed unlucky. On one hand, the Sword Saint was concerned about the barrier. On the other, a woman named Aoi appeared in the forest. Her task was to recruit sages, and she killed any candidates who refused. Aoi's next targets were Yogiri and Tomochika. Aoi believed that sage candidates would die regardless, but Hanakawa, a classmate of Yogiri's, emerged from the woods. After being driven away by Yogiri, Hanakawa had been picked up by another sage candidate, whom Aoi had just killed. Therefore, Hanakawa decided to become Aoi's subordinate. Tomochika was woken up by Ancestor, who almost got sucked into the wall. Ancestor explained that the tower seemed to have a strong attraction to souls. Fortunately, Yogiri woke up and quickly disabled the mechanism inside the wall. He seriously told Tomochika to be mentally prepared, as he would not hesitate to kill any enemy inside the tower, as they all harbored murderous intentions towards them. Tomochika pointed out that they had been killing all along, and that she had been prepared from the start. She believed that Yogiri taking action was equivalent to her doing so herself, not being a helpless damsel. Still, she hoped for moderation, concerned that too much killing might affect their mood. Yogiri was touched by her straightforwardness, feeling a bit embarrassed. Damn, such a straightforward girl is amazing. You're moved, aren't you, Yogiri? You must be. Hanakawa followed Aoi to the Sword Saint's assessment site and learned about Aoi's supernatural ability to nullify all other powers, akin to an alternate world gender-swapped version of Osamu Dazai. However, Aoi's ability depended on the fate value of others. She couldn't interfere if their fate value was too high. Although the Golden Dragon's flying ability was restricted, it could still fight. Just as Aoi was about to act, an intruder suddenly beheaded the Golden Dragon. At that moment, Aoi saw a tall tower and immediately dragged Hanakawa towards it. Hanakawa, terrified of Yogiri, couldn't refuse Aoi. Meanwhile, as Yogiri descended the floors, he destroyed all monsters and traps around him, attracting the attention of the great mage who created the tower. The mage stated that he couldn't let Yogiri leave easily, fearing he might be used by the demon god's followers. However, before he could finish speaking, Yogiri defeated him instantly. Tomochika felt like they had just killed an important supporting character. At the same time, the Sword Saint noticed chaos inside the tower, and Linnell was also accumulating points. Unknowingly, they met up. Yogiri's group reached the next floor and found a male contestant blocking the stairway with 3 girls, fighting a half-demon girl. Hearing that Yogiri's group only had 6 points, he suggested Yogiri join the half-demon side for a 3-on-3 match, promising to let them pass if they won. If they lost, the half-demon girl and Tomochika would be left behind. The male contestant, who disliked handsome guys, planned to kill Yogiri, but was swiftly defeated by him, after Yogiri instantly took down the 3 girls. The half-demon girl then blocked Yogiri's path, bowing and earnestly asking for his help. Yogiri looked at Tomochika, who hesitated, but ultimately decided to listen first. Have you ever seen a male protagonist who kills with ease? The protagonist, Yogiri, travels through a different world with a girl, killing anyone at his command. He reaches a level in the Sword Saint's assessment and meets a half-demon girl named Dior. Dior reveals she is searching for her sister, who was captured in the assessment tower. Helping her would mean opposing the Sword Saint. Yogiri believes he has already dismantled most of the tower and is on their blacklist, so helping Dior makes no difference. However, they will only assist in searching, not fighting. Dior says her sibling might be in the basement. At this point, Linnell and a new female team member join them. Together, they reach the first floor of the tower where 17 people pass and become Holy King Knights. Suddenly, a robot managing the tower attacks, reporting a barrier issue. The barrier suppressing the demon god disappears, and a demon god's kin appears, demanding the remaining barriers be lifted. The Sword Saint and the newly qualified knights fight, but are no match for the demon god's kin, who even outnumber them. Seeing this, Yogiri quickly takes Tomochika and Dior to the basement, fearing that defeating the demon god's kin might draw the Sword Saint's attention. Meanwhile, the Sword Saint continues to fight for humanity, but Yogiri and his companions escape. As the situation worsens, Lionel uses a holy crystal to summon a goddess who claims she can easily handle the demon god's kin. However, upon approaching, the kin greet her instead. The goddess jokes that drawing Lionel was the start of his bad luck, suggesting that releasing the demon god and ending humanity might solve everything. In the basement, Yogiri and his team find an internal barrier. Before Yogiri can act, the barrier suddenly breaks. Tomochika spots a monster that looks like a knife charging out. Dior enters the basement to find her kin drained of magic, leaving only their skins, and is devastated. Fortunately, her sister is not among them. Yogiri shields Tomochika from the horrific scene and decides to take them back to the surface first. Dior vows to take revenge and kill the Sword Saint herself. Meanwhile, the Sword Saint gathers power to use the tower's extracted energy to kill a girl. Linnell, desperate, talks to the goddess to buy time, learning that the sealed demon god is her old flame. She has been trying to rescue the demon god, but all her emissaries were killed by the Sword Saint. So, she sent Linnell, the unluckiest, to the humans, hoping to curse them with bad luck, which ironically worked. Linnell is devastated, kneeling down. Before taking action, the goddess checks the situation and discovers that the creator of the tower's barrier is dead, and the tower's goddess killer is also gone. Linnell realizes he has impacted humanity's future. The goddess then reveals the core of the barrier, telling Linnell his cheat is gone and letting him see the demon god before he dies, giving him clarity in his final moments. When Yogiri and Tomochika reached the ground, they saw the barrier had been damaged. Everyone thought the demon god was about to resurrect. However, as soon as the Holy King drew his sword, the demon god simply dropped dead. Tomochika closed her eyes in silence. It turned out that the moment Yogiri arrived at the scene and was enveloped in miasma, he reflexively killed the demon god. He felt somewhat sorry about it. What's going on with this show? While everyone was shocked, Dior drew her sword and killed the Sword Saint. The goddess hadn't reacted yet and was severely wounded by a monster that looked like a knife, which Tomochika had just seen. It seemed the monster stabbed the wrong target. Meanwhile, the healed goddess got up and went crazy. The demon god's subordinates also went wild, deciding to use the released magical beasts to treat all humans as live sacrifices. The Holy King protected Linnell and his group. Yogiri told Tomochika and Dior to stay close, while he killed the demon god's subordinates. Though the goddess seemed mad, Yogiri felt no need to kill her since she hadn't attacked them. The goddess was randomly casting spells everywhere. Sage killers Aoi and Hanakawa also arrived at the scene. Aoi dodged the spells and asked Rick if he had seen Yogiri. Rick said it wasn't the time for reunion as people were dying. Then Aoi reminded him that the inherited holy sword could kill the goddess. Just like that, Rick stabbed the goddess to death. That was sudden. Hanakawa didn't want to meet Yogiri, but recognized Tomochika in the smoke. Once the smoke cleared, Aoi immediately used his appraisal skill on Yogiri and discovered that Yogiri was a monster in human skin, the endpoint of destiny. Overwhelmed by this revelation, Aoi vomited, realizing Sage Sion had summoned a terrifying entity. After slipping and falling, Aoi ran away, leaving Hanakawa behind. At the end, there were few survivors left. Rick initially wanted to ask Dior why she killed the Sword Saint. Yogiri advised him to first check the basement and said he wouldn't stand by if Rick intended to avenge the Sword Saint. Rick thought he could beat Yogiri, but the Holy King intervened, immediately recognizing that Yogiri had killed the demon god and his kin. Shocked, Rick asked who Yogiri really was. Yogiri said he was just an ordinary high school student summoned by a sage. Tomochika retorted, "Who would believe that?" Rick asked about Yogiri's next move. Yogiri said they were heading to the royal capital. It turned out all the survivors present were planning to go in the same direction. Linnell wanted to heal his companion's arm. Dior planned to search for her sister in the capital and even mentioned her sister's name, which sounded familiar to Yogiri and Tomochika. The Holy King was also headed to the capital. Yogiri asked Rick for directions. Rick initially wanted to invite him along, but Yogiri declined, preferring to travel alone with Tomochika. Before leaving, Rick gave Yogiri 2 necklaces, mentioning that they could be shown in the capital. Then, Yogiri and his companions set off on their journey. Hanakawa was left behind and taken away by the goddess's followers. Sage Sion wanted to investigate Yogiri, so he directly summoned people from Earth who knew Yogiri. The researchers were stunned to hear that Yogiri had been summoned to another world and his powers had come with him. They initially got excited and thanked the sage for saving humanity. But the next moment, they heard the first barrier break, causing all Class C associated personnel to explode. The researchers exploded right in front of the sage, leaving Sion shocked. What exactly is Yogiri? Meanwhile, on the vehicle where Yogiri and the others had just been summoned to another world, their classmate Ayaka, who had previously died, was resurrected. She was still a bit dazed, but heard a voice in her mind telling her she was an artificial person with the highest authority of an individual personality. Under the AI's command, Ayaka consumed a dead dragon next to her to replenish her body's functions. Yogiri grew up under the guidance of his sister Asaka, who was more like a mother to him. Asaka, unwilling to admit her age, noticed Yogiri's mundane life and got a bunch of items from delivery robots, including elementary school textbooks and children's toys, which helped them get through the first month. Even the researchers were surprised that Asaka managed to make it through a month, continuing to cook despite the food being unpalatable. Asaka also received a substantial salary and was told she could go out whenever she wanted. She was surprised and told the researchers not to keep children locked up, as it wasn't healthy. After learning that robots could also cook, Asaka angrily requested a day off. When she woke up next, she found herself in a solitary cell, vaguely remembering having gone out, eaten a lot, and stayed in an expensive hotel suite. How did she end up in this pitch-dark room? Was she captured? She guessed right. The people who captured Asaka said they wouldn't harm her, but wanted to ask her some questions. Meanwhile, Yogiri couldn't wait for Asaka to return, and asked the robot where Asaka was. The robot replied that Asaka was on a holiday, and only the researchers knew where she went. Yogiri then broke the barrier, fought through those trying to stop him, and found out from the researchers that Asaka had been kidnapped by a world-class organization that also couldn't help rescue her. Hearing this, Yogiri decided to go and rescue Asaka himself and instructed the researchers to keep today's events a secret from Asaka. Yogiri stormed into the world-class organization. Initially, the organization didn't take Yogiri seriously, thinking he was just another person who would die upon being seen. They decided to kill Yogiri before being seen by him. However, just by thinking about it, the few people with murderous intent towards him died. Meanwhile, Asaka was worried about Yogiri's situation when suddenly, members of the organization burst in and took her hostage. So much for not harming me, right? Asaka never expected to see Yogiri here. The people holding Asaka intended to threaten Yogiri not to act. However, they died as soon as they spoke. Asaka watched silently. Hearing Yogiri wanted to take her back, she followed him without a word. Seeing corpses scattered outside, she realized Yogiri was very tense. Thus, she firmly held his hand and led him back to the research base. She let Asaka play with a dog while discussing with the researchers herself. Relieved to hear Yogiri would not be punished, she inquired about her own situation. The researchers stated that Asaka could not resign now, and she had no plans to resign either. She believed Yogiri was not a bad person, but needed to learn some common sense and control to avoid future problems. Yogiri was lucky to have a responsible mom, like Asaka from a young age, and to meet Tomochika in high school, who trusted him. Meanwhile, Ancestor was persuading Tomochika to seize control over Yogiri. Tomochika had feelings for Yogiri but felt he should have his own choices. She kept her conversation with Ancestor secret. When Yogiri woke up, Tomochika informed him they had arrived at the royal capital and were surrounded by a group because they were in the Immortal Group's vehicle, gifted by the mayor of Hanachu City. Yogiri declared they were sage candidates. The surrounding knights verified their status, but noted such disguises were easy to make. Yogiri then produced a necklace given by Rick, making the knights kneel. The necklace was a royal family's protective totem. Originally, the knights planned to let Yogiri enter the royal capital, but then a royal family member challenged them, doubting Rick's claim to the Sword Saint's position. Ancestor told Tomochika to fight him, noting the challenger was weaker. Tomochika reluctantly agreed. Yogiri and the others watched as Tomochika used hand movements to confuse the challenger, then sprinted behind him and delivered a crippling kick, defeating the challenger instantly. Everyone marveled at her skill. The challenger, hardy as he was, recovered quickly and introduced the city's outer defenses, built by a great magician, to Yogiri. Yogiri remained silent as he had effortlessly defeated the great magician. The challenger, named David, now timid around Tomochika, offered to guide them and introduced many explorers in the city. David also revealed that a demon god was sealed under the royal capital. Surprised, Tomochika realized there were multiple demon gods. After dismissing David, Yogiri asked Tomochika if she was ready to meet their classmates and if she would forgive them. Tomochika pondered this, but they soon joined the main group and met the king. Some classmates, relying on their abilities, attempted to challenge the king but were swiftly punished by having their fingers cut off. On the other side, Sion went to see Aoi. Aoi, frightened by Yogiri, was sulking in a different dimension. With no other option, Sion could only communicate with Aoi's weapon. The weapon had overheard a conversation between Hanakawa and a goddess's follower. It was mentioned that Yogiri could kill enemies with his mind. Meanwhile, the goddess's followers were determined to avenge their goddess by summoning the demon god's sister, and had also kidnapped Hanakawa. At the same time, the Holy King returned to the royal capital but faced testing there. The king told the students that to complete the second phase of their task, they must defeat the demon god beneath the capital. The king and the sages had a pact to prepare a base for the sage candidates. The royal family had an effect that weakened blessings, but these could still be used if he left the vicinity. After the king left, Tomochika shouted, and the classmates realized they were still alive. Yogiri and Tomochika then met with Yazaki, who had initially proposed abandoning them. Yazaki felt he had done nothing wrong. Yogiri was not upset, but Tomochika was slightly annoyed, though she felt complaining was pointless. Instead, she asked Yazaki if their presence would cause any trouble. Unexpectedly, the class's famous idol, Akino, stepped forward, warmly welcomed them, and scolded Yazaki. It seemed that Yazaki was no longer the leader. Yogiri returned to his room and met two underachieving male classmates. After rejoining the class, Yogiri pretended to have gained the ability to repel insects. One of the underachievers was a chef, and the other was a nerd who could understand all books. At this moment, a student named Fukai approached. His ability was similar to that of a Grim Reaper, somewhat resembling Yogiri's, as he could instantly kill his enemies. Fukai revealed that he knew of Yogiri's past identity and stated that he no longer needed to rely on Yogiri. Fukai had been ordered to observe Yogiri, not to approach or look directly at him. Yet he took out his own eyes, claiming they could originally see through everything, but were now useless here. He mentioned that Yogiri had not unleashed his power and left his eyes behind. Yogiri was confused by this. At the same time, Tomochika was approached by Ninomiya and Carol, who wanted to talk about Yogiri. Tomochika then brought the two girls to find Yogiri. Ninomiya, holding Carol, prepared to apologize to Yogiri. It turned out that Ninomiya was from a research institute, and Carol was from the organization that had previously kidnapped Asaka. As for Fukai, who spoke abstractly, he belonged to another faction called the Cult. All three were enrolled in high school to monitor Yogiri. Although Yogiri had suspected the presence of observers, he never imagined there would be 3. Elsewhere, the maid who had been instantly killed by Yuki, known as Mia, Dior's sister, was currently being chased by vampires. Mia instinctively fought back but accidentally recalled memories about Lane and inherited powers, becoming the true ancestor of vampires. Yogiri and his group learned about the current class composition through Ninomiya and another student. It turned out Yazaki couldn't manage the class team, but Akino, who had the power to restrict others, replaced him as the manager. Yogiri stated their goal was to speak with the sage Sion to find a way back. Ninomiya and Carol were naturally willing to help, though their primary goal was to defeat the demon god. The boys and girls split into 2 teams. Tomochika was surprised to find that Rick, whom she had met before, was leading the girls' team, while David led the boys' team. Yogiri and Tomochika both disguised their abilities and successfully fooled everyone. At the same time, 2 other forces were also heading to the royal capital. One included the goddess's followers and Hanakawa. To stop Hanakawa from complaining all the time, the young boy transformed into a feminine appearance. They went to a tavern to gather information and prepared to release the demon god's sister sealed beneath the capital. Meanwhile, Mia, who had inherited Lane's memories, was on her way to the capital and encountered Leslie, a copy of Lane who had lost all memories. Hanakawa and his group were gathering information when they realized their classmates had reached the 5th level of the demon god's labyrinth, which was why a festival was being held in the city. Seeing his former classmates, Hanakawa instinctively hid. The followers gave him a hiding skill. Just then, the resurrected Ayaka returned and, holding a grudge for being abandoned on a bus, killed a classmate on the spot. She told the remaining classmates to inform everyone that she would kill 1 student every day as revenge. As Hanakawa was about to flee, Sage Sion found him and offered information about the demon god in exchange for news about Yogiri. After learning that Yogiri could sense murderous intent, Sion wanted to deal with him. A follower mentioned revenge. Initially, Sion wanted to kill Hanakawa after getting the information, but was stopped by the follower. She reluctantly shared the information about the entrance to the demon god and let Hanakawa go. The follower couldn't understand her reasoning. Meanwhile, Yogiri and his group also heard about Ayaka's resurrection. Yogiri believed that conquering the demon god's labyrinth wasn't simple, but with 1 month almost up, it was unclear what Sion, the sage, was thinking. On the other side, Sion received news that the sage candidates had reached the 6th level of the labyrinth, with the 7th being the sealing site of the demon god. Sion was considering whether to hinder their progress when Haruto found her using his skills and requested an extension of the assessment time. Sion noted that time was merely pressure for them and agreed to consider an extension if Haruto dealt with Yogiri. The vengeful Ayaka had her principles. When classmates confronted her, she severely beat them, but then learned their powers were sealed. She let them go, vowing to kill them once their seals were lifted. The followers of the goddess and Hanakawa found the underground labyrinth. Before they could unseal it, the demon god they were looking for came to them. Attracted by the scent, they discovered that the sealed demon god's sister was a pervert. As soon as the followers took out the key to her seal, she became overjoyed. After being unsealed, she went to see her children, who, according to the followers, were born from her fantasies about her brother. Hanakawa commented, "Are there any serious gods in this world?" Meanwhile, the leader of the Assassin's Guild received a task. Tomochika went to find Yogiri, complaining that he had been doing nothing lately. Yogiri explained that he had been practicing mercy to use during his upcoming interrogation of the sage. He also mentioned that he had been watched while out in town, so he asked Tomochika for help. Ayaka, seeking a fair fight, even went as far as killing the king who had sealed her classmates. She then found a classmate who could heal severed limbs and requested a rematch. Realizing the opponent's strength was mediocre, sealed or not, she simply killed him. Yogiri and Tomochika went out, and he asked her to help identify who was watching him. Tomochika, slightly annoyed that it wasn't a date, petulantly demanded a meal in return for her help. Upon hearing Yogiri agree, she joyfully pulled out a flyer for a nearby popular couple's restaurant. At the same time, a girl controlled a man's mind, making him shoot at Yogiri. The man struggled, and before he could fire, Yogiri detected and killed him. The girl decided to target Tomochika next time. Tomochika and Yogiri then visited the couple's restaurant, only to find it had been trashed by Ayaka. Before Tomochika could fully express her anger, a bullet was fired, hitting a bystander instead. Yogiri quickly shielded Tomochika and sternly looked at the surveillance camera, warning that he would soon settle accounts with them. Ancestor then appeared, stating she had locked onto the signal source. Why target Yogiri's wife? Realizing the situation was bad, the leader of the assassins fled, but Yogiri destroyed his plane, and Tomochika captured him. Clearly aware of Yogiri's strength, he had intended to summon the fairy princess and the elf king, but Tomochika's ancestor crushed them. The leader quickly summoned the queen of the underworld, who appeared wanting to make a contract. Before he could stop her, Yogiri killed the queen. At that moment, a purple-haired girl intervened to stop Yogiri. Strangely, Yogiri didn't kill her instantly. Luckily, Tomochika caught the weapon. Yogiri approached, seemingly recognizing the girl, and transferred the admin command. The girl fell into a deep sleep. Yogiri did not immediately explain but pressured the assassin leader to reveal all the truth. Haruto is still secretly plotting to assassinate Yogiri. The followers gave Hanakawa the key, telling him it should prevent him from being killed. They plan to honestly tell the demon god's sister about the goddess's death. Hanakawa is surprised by this sudden declaration of intent. The demon god's sister took them back to the seal point. It turns out she could always enter and exit the seal, because it was made by her beloved brother, and she didn't want to destroy it. The assassination leader says he will reveal all the truth, and hopes Yogiri will spare him. However, Yogiri says he will still kill the leader, because his skill allows him to replicate objects from the original world, including duplicating the girl's body, which annoys Yogiri. Later, Yogiri explains to Tomochika that the girl, named Kokai, is his childhood friend. Although this one here is a robot, it was modeled after Kokai. Tomochika is relieved to hear this, thinking the girl was dead. Yogiri mentions that Kokai is probably still at home eating chips, and this is just a look-alike robot. Tomochika is glad Kokai is alive and would not have tolerated her being exploited even in death. Meanwhile, Ayaka challenges a classmate who is the worst cook, but had hidden his strength. His cooking skills can prepare any creature, including the dragon Ayaka had devoured. Not only the chef, but a hidden bookworm also had concealed strength. His book can predict someone's future, and it stated the chef would be killed by Ayaka. When Yogiri and others hear an explosion and arrive at the scene, they confirm Ayaka is truly alive. As more classmates are killed, Akino and the remaining 18 hold a meeting. They believe Ayaka's success is due to their combat-oriented classmates being away on quests. Ayaka targeted those who were alone, and her actions led the kingdom to feel threatened with extinction, considering expelling them. Akino suggests they should quickly complete the Demon God dungeon. Everyone agrees with Akino's plan, and they prepare to tackle the dungeon. At the scene, they are so powerful that there's no need for Tomochika and Yogiri to intervene. On the other hand, the Demon God's sister, upon learning of her brother's death, immediately cuts off a follower's arm. Hanakawa argues justly and manages to save the follower's life. They then unseal the Demon God's sister. At the same time, everyone had just completed the underground maze and was celebrating. Tomochika noticed Yogiri was missing, put down her food, and went to look for him. At that moment, Yogiri saw a drunk David about to fall off a cliff and lunged to save him. They then noticed red light bursting from below the cliff. At the celebration, Haruto remarked on how smoothly their plan had gone, but was surprised when Sion suddenly appeared, demanding that all sage candidates kill each other, with only the last survivor becoming a sage. Meanwhile, Ninomiya, clutching his phone, showed a look of horror because the second seal on Yogiri seemed to have been broken. Then, Yogiri and David fell into the depths of the red light together. Dior, having left the assessment site, was searching for his sister while rescuing his fellow kin. After solving a kidnapping case involving a demi-demon, he ran into his sister Mia, who was on her way to the royal city with Leslie. Sion announced that the assessment would start within an hour, where the students had to kill each other. Those who failed to kill would be executed by Sion, and those who fled would also be dealt with by Sion. Fukai tried to attack Sion, but realized he couldn't kill him no matter what, as Sion could infinitely upgrade, refresh his status, and revive. Sion then blew Fukai's head off, causing everyone to flee. Tomochika, searching for Yogiri in the forest, encountered fleeing classmates. At the same time, Yogiri, protecting David, remembered Asaka's words about creating new rules to become powerful and never indulging oneself regardless of power. According to Asaka, one should live by the rules, but Yogiri thought he would have died if he did. He had promised to return with Tomochika, so he killed his own momentum and landed with David on the 7th floor of the demon god's maze. Meanwhile, the demon god's sister was freed and decided to resurrect her brother. Hanakawa initially wanted to leave with his followers, but realized they were inside the demon god's sister. The followers had given Hanakawa a key to unlock her seal to help him escape and sacrifice themselves to kick Hanakawa out. At the same time, Dior and his sister, after meeting up, followed Leslie to the royal city. Leslie's goal was to find Yogiri. Yogiri received a message from Ancestor about Sion's demand for the students to kill each other. He looked up to see Hanakawa being pursued, promised to protect him for a while, and asked Hanakawa to take David with him. Meanwhile, the students had already started killing each other. The bookworm realized a classmate was after him and immediately changed the future by altering the content of his book, only for the pursuer to run into Ayaka. Tomochika was acting alone, trusting no one but Yogiri. Hearing that Yogiri had fallen to the 7th floor of the underground maze and couldn't find his way back, Ancestor only sent him a location. Without a system installed, Tomochika chose to hide and not engage in combat. The bookworm escaped to an underground passage and found an elevator leading to the maze. At that time, Hanakawa and Yogiri were also boarding the elevator to go up. Sensing their movements through his book, the bookworm planned to crush all three with the ceiling to survive the massacre. However, no matter what he did, the book showed that he would die. When the elevator doors opened and Hanakawa was still processing, Yogiri immediately told the bookworm to die, sensing his murderous intent. Hanakawa then received a message, realizing he was also dragged into the massacre. Yogiri thought that if Hanakawa won, Sion might come to kill him. Meanwhile, two boys conspired to kill a classmate with saintess abilities. Unexpectedly, the saintess was unharmed and effortlessly killed one of them. Before the school trip, she had been accidentally killed by two cats fighting with laser cannons. The cats revived her and granted her the ability to communicate with the cat god, giving her dual powers. The male classmate thought the saintess could kill the sage so they wouldn't have to kill each other. However, finding Sion's event interesting, the saintess joined the massacre, teleporting to kill Hanakawa but was counter-killed by Yogiri. And after a creepy glance from Hanakawa, she fled in fear. Elsewhere, Tomochika's former best friend also arrived. The girl who had previously acted with the former best friend was nowhere to be found and likely dead. The former best friend, who was not a good person, had also hidden her abilities. Her true power was summoning spirits, and she also had a guardian spirit. She summoned a beautiful princess, overshadowing Tomochika's ancestor in appearance. Not giving up, she used her gift to seize Tomochika's ancestor and ordered it to attack Tomochika. Tomochika's outfit was controlled by her ancestor through weapon transformation. As her ancestor was compelled to disarm Tomochika, Yogiri arrived at the scene. He punched Hanakawa, who had not yet reacted, swelling his eyes, and threatened to kill him if he dared to look. Then he gave a thumbs up to the nearby ancestor. "Quickly take off your jacket and put it on your wife." The former best friend trembled with fear when she saw Yogiri. Meanwhile, next to the forest, Yazaki and his team were challenging Akino, planning to conquer Akino before facing the sage. However, Akino did not support their actions. When surrounded by the team, he summoned a large number of fans who unexpectedly blew themselves up. Soon, Yazaki and several classmates were caught in the explosion. The next second, Akino, who was still at an advantage, was swallowed by murky liquid erupting from the ground. Haruto immediately revealed his trump card, flying into the air to dodge the strangling attack. The former best friend sensed the protagonist's threat and dared not act, but suddenly heard a voice in her mind asking if she desired power. Thinking this was the sage's way of releasing power, she immediately agreed to enhance her strength. She then abandoned Tomochika's ancestor, believing she had gained invincible power. However, she was instantly killed by a mere word from Yogiri. Seeing her former best friend fall, Tomochika sighed. Well, she's dead now. Hanakawa suddenly sprang up, suggesting that Tomochika should scold Yogiri for being too harsh. Tomochika was speechless. She wouldn't do that. Yogiri shared his plan with Tomochika, intending to use Hanakawa to lure out Sion. Meanwhile, a girl who could summon firearms was defeated by Ayaka, who in desperation summoned a can of liquid. As Ninomiya and Yogiri just met up, both trusting Yogiri's power, they were preparing to collaborate when a violent explosion occurred behind them. Yogiri quickly protected everyone behind him. Was the liquid summoned by the girl nuclear bomb material? Haruto's fate in the explosion was unknown. Ayaka was severely injured by the blast, using the dragon's healing ability through the voice in her mind, but she was completely transformed into a dragon. Ninomiya reminded Yogiri that the second seal was released, but Yogiri didn't care. He was more concerned about whether the assessment still counted. Now transformed into a dragon, Ayaka turned her teeth into clones and prepared to search for other surviving classmates at the explosion site, intending to annihilate them all for revenge. Seeing Yogiri and his group surviving, Ayaka immediately ordered the clones to attack, only to be instantly killed by Yogiri. Then it seemed that the AI in her mind recognized Yogiri, urging the main personality to retreat quickly. However, the main personality was solely focused on revenge, unable to bear the thought of her disfigured self. She too was instantly killed by Yogiri. The AI realized that their other branches had not disappeared, thinking this method could potentially target Yogiri in the future. However, there were no actions to take at that moment. Hanakawa was worried that Sion might have died in the explosion. Unexpectedly, as soon as he mentioned it, Sion appeared behind everyone. Without hesitation, Yogiri first killed her legs, stating he only wanted to find a way back. He believed Sion, who summoned them, should know. After being attacked, Sion immediately retaliated. She then realized her organs were continuously being killed by the protagonist and teleported away in an attempt to escape. Her favored subordinate rushed in, only to have his organs destroyed too, with no chance of recovery. Sion and this subordinate were lovers. Angered and distressed by this, she gritted her teeth and returned to confront Yogiri. Hanakawa then realized that even without seeing Sion, Yogiri could kill her organs and anyone Sion could see. Sion stated she had no way back. Previously, Hanakawa and the others could return because there were dependencies with past events, but if there were connections, they couldn't use their full strength. Yogiri didn't care about those details and asked Sion for the original world's coordinates. He learned that returning required a lot of energy, which could be substituted by the Philosopher's Stone. Sion then offered her stones, having no intention of returning to Earth, and mentioned the energy in the stones was insufficient. Each sage had a Philosopher's Stone, but the energy would disappear if the sage was killed by Yogiri. Without a list of sages, Yogiri needed to collect more stones to return. After gathering this information, Yogiri prepared to leave without killing Sion, as he hadn't suffered losses since being summoned. After Yogiri left, Sion planned to return to her mansion to treat her lover, but was unexpectedly trapped inside by the demon sister. The demon sister, sensing the system within Sion, quickly absorbed her as nourishment. Realizing she couldn't escape, Sion's only regret was not being with her lover. She told the demon sister that Yogiri would be the one to kill her. Meanwhile, various chaotic forces appeared in the city, but most were absorbed by the demon sister as nourishment. Rick was in the city, cutting through the demon's power. Yogiri and his group took a shortcut to the rooftop and discovered the church's archbishop was a follower of the demon sister. Before he could say anything, Yogiri instantly killed him. Hanakawa was shocked, lamenting that he didn't even let the man speak his part of the plot. Tomochika felt her role as the comedic critic was being usurped. Below, seeing the crimson flood, Hanakawa then revealed he had unlocked the demon sister's seal. Unaware that the demon sister had already caught up and learned that Yogiri had killed her brother, she was prepared to kill Yogiri, but was instantly killed by him in a single sentence, possibly setting a record for the fastest boss death. With the area below flooded by red liquid, Yogiri and his group were unsure how to leave. David led them to the rooftop. "There's a small plane over there that can carry 5 people," someone said. Consequently, Yogiri decided to abandon Hanakawa again. However, at that moment, Ancestor suggested another way to leave and instructed David to take Ninomiya and the others first. After the 4 boarded the plane and left, Ancestor changed his weapon form again. He dressed Tomochika in a superheroine costume, which was quite revealing, making Tomochika feel embarrassed. Hearing that she could take off by herself, Yogiri didn't hesitate and picked her up immediately. Tomochika complained about how skillfully he embraced her, exclaiming, "What's wrong with holding my own wife?" Eventually, led by Tomochika, the two safely landed in a secure area, only to find that Hanakawa had run away. Nonetheless, Ninomiya and Carol decided to follow Yogiri's lead. Yogiri agreed they could come along but stated he would only prepare the energy for him and Tomochika to return. They were not surprised. Meanwhile, Leslie and the half-demon sisters arrived at the scene. As soon as they got out of the car, Leslie proposed to Yogiri, who quickly refused him. Undeterred, Leslie took out a philosopher's stone to offer Yogiri, asking him to listen to a request. On the other side, the Holy King woke up, saw the demon god easily defeated, and thought Yogiri was too terrifying a being to be left unchecked. Why target the main character? He wondered. Haruto was fortunate to have survived the explosion but was discovered and taken away by a mechanical body. Yogiri and his companions set out on their quest to find the sages, with him resting on Tomochika's lap. He dreamed of what Asaka had once told him about using his power only after careful thought, not simply reacting to others' words. Watching Yogiri sleep, the girls nearby envied Tomochika. "What? Just because our Tomochika is the heroine, you have a problem with that?" one said defiantly. "I'm settling in here today. Anyone who tries to break up my ship gets a beating."